Aloha, mahalo, and all that other crap.
Aloha, mahalo, all that stuff.
What is your favorite horror film?
My favorite horror film, Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living Dead.
Why Return of the Living Dead?
That's
not a loaded question. I'm just
no. I know. Okay, so
because you're into punk rock.
I mean,
you really love the song. Do you want to party? It's party time.
I have that poster. I bought.
Diana Cancer is the singer of that band. Diana Cancer.
Yep.
Did you? Hopefully, you didn't have cancer in your life.
Split dogs.
So why?
Biggest sellers.
Or the best line.
Dogs.
Send more cops and stuff.
And that's why, it's the zombies in that movie are so crafty and so mean and so funny, and you get the whole range of emotions. You get the guy with all the stuff in his face, the mohawk, and he's like, "This isn't a costume. This is a way of life." And you've got the pagan eroticism of dancing in the grave. Oh, Carla's taking off her clothes again. It wasn't Carla. I don't remember her name.
I am a big fan of the original Night of the Living Dead.
A fantastic movie.
It's so creepy.
It is.
In its lack of production.
Yep.
But, okay. Fast zombies versus slow zombies.
I mean, okay. That being my favorite horror movie notwithstanding.
Okay.
I'm an analytical enough guy that I really... they'd have to be slow zombies. Okay. Like, running zombies are right out... And I know we're talking about, like, ridiculous fictional... But,
this shit's important.
Yeah. It would have to be slow zombies. And if you take it back to the original ethnographic stuff where they're just sort of mind-controlled, drugged-out dudes, like... They're gonna be slow and uncoordinated and receptive to what people tell them to do. They're not gonna be running around.
No, I am a fan though of the Dawn of the Dead remake.
Oh yeah,
and that is
fun. That's a fun movie.
And that was my introduction to fast zombies. And I really liked that movie, and I really loved the thing where it was like, here's this zombie running at you at full speed.
Yep.
I thought that was cool. But then it started getting a little crazy when they did the remake of Day of the Dead, because then it was like they kind of can just kind of. But it was just something weird and scary about a zombie running at you full speed.
Yeah.
Your favorite horror film is Return of the Living Dead.
Yep.
Mine is The Shining.
Excellent. I love that movie.
And it's hard to and it's hard because it's like I don't see it even as a horror film. I see it as a Stanley Kubrick film.
Sure.
But my favorite, I would say, the most disturbing horror film is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That movie just gets underneath your skin.
Yep. Although I do love that movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is got to be my favorite of the franchise, though, because
at least you can watch it over. Because you watch the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you're like, I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I think I'm good.
Serious. I mean, it's disturbing. The only thing that I could watch in that movie is at the very end, where Leatherface is just kind of rolling around with the chainsaw. There's a T-shirt. that has that. It's like it has the image of Leatherface, and it's like kind of like 4 or 5 images of him in different colors, and it says disco.
Since you're a Shining fan, did you see the Stephen King miniseries Shining?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Do you have a preference between the two?
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick's.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I remember I saw the movie.
Yeah.
First, obviously.
Sure.
And I loved Jack Torrance. Well, Jack Nicholson is Jack Torrance.
Yeah.
Him doing all the one-liners. I think that's what it is. I mean, I saw that movie when I was a teenager. That's when I was full on into slashers. I was reading Fangoria.
Yep.
And I grew up on slasher films. I was a product of the 80s.
Me too. We're about the same. Yeah.
So what you had is you had Michael Myers.
Yep.
You had Jason Voorhees.
Yep.
And most of the slasher movies that came out was just literally some dude going around indiscriminately killing people. Usually not a lot of talking.
Yep.
The lines that the actor, whoever played Jason Voorhees, what are my lines? Oh, nothing. Okay. But what I loved about Jack Torrance, everything he says is gold, you know. And I think that's why I kind of like when Nightmare on Elm Street came out.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Oh, I was all about Freddy.
Oh yeah, because he's got personality. Like Freddy has moxie.
Well, what's your opinion of like old style Hitchcock kind of horror films?
Oh, love them. Love.
Where you don't necessarily need to see the violence and the gore.
Yeah, because I mean, it's all about you know, in any horror film, you've got the rising tension and then the release. The older films paid it off in a different way, but it still follows that formula: the rising tension and the release.
Yeah.
So, depending on how the movie is made, like as long as it accomplishes that, then it's done its job as a horror piece or a suspense piece, and I can appreciate it just as well. I tell you that, in all honesty, like the longer I live and the more the average shot length decreases in time, the harder some of the old classics get to watch, because I'm like, where is my next camera angle? Now, the flip side of that coin is like some of the stuff that I see now, some of the action films I see with my daughter, I feel like it's just like, and I think that is part of the zeitgeist of being a film viewer is you're used to whatever your experience of reality and filmed reality is, and you're used to I want to say that in the 80s, like shot length is something like 3 to 5 seconds, and now we're down to like milliseconds, and back in the 40s we were at like 10 seconds, and it makes it feel dated, and it makes it feel like it's going on a long time.
I think that's the reason why the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sits with me, because the lack of production. There isn't much of a soundtrack.
Yep.
And things will hold longer than they need to be.
Yep.
But I honestly think when things are,
I think
it goes too crazy, you're like, you don't know what to latch on to.
Sure.
I mean, it's all preference.
Some of that I think was a stylistic choice by Tobe Hooper, because some of those shots are longer than the average shot length, but some of it's just the shot length used to be longer.
But you know what the interesting thing about doing something like that? When you do when you do a shot and just keep it longer than it should,
it becomes uncomfortable.
It becomes uncomfortable, and what happens is people start, what should I be paying attention to?
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of that has to do with the short attention span of kids or people today?
I think everybody has like an aggregate perceived reality as filmed that they're comfortable with, that they're used to, and that's driven by technology at the time.
Let's talk about technology now.
Well, so like now, you or I can go edit the video. If we had a 2-camera setup digitally, it would be very easy to chop and splice and move between cameras.
Yeah.
If we were having to do it manually with scissors, there's a certain amount you can't make a shot length.
It's effort.
It's very effortful.
Yeah.
And will probably degrade. So yeah, my daughter expects quicker edits because her entire life it's been able to be done digitally, and it could be like a millisecond quick cut. She's used to it. I'm not used to it because I'm still from that bleed over when we had projectionists. Movies weren't, like the joke in Fight Club where Tyler Durden's hobby was splicing single cells of pornography into family films. Like that job doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Now they're digitally projected and they don't have to change reels. No. It's just part of I read, so I've got a degree in graphic design, and one of the core tenets of Intro to Typography is that all art is influenced heavily by the mark-making tools available at the time.
Okay.
And with type, if you look, there's like the papyrus, Greek Roman fonts look like they do because they're using chisels, and the most common mark-making method was chisels in stone.
Makes complete sense.
Egyptian, it was quills in clay tabret, so you get that papyrus font looking kind of.
Yeah.
But that extrapolates to like film from the early days of cinema was like you could only have a film that was 7 minutes long before you had to change reels because the film would like catch on fire and blow up.
Yeah.
And then, it's like digital effects from the 90s when they first started intercutting digital and with practical effects. You can pick those movies out of a lineup. You can go, I bet that, if you watch too many movies like I do, you can sit there and you go like, okay, that's when...
I'm at a point now where I can tell when a movie's from the 90s.
Sure.
Which for a long time I wouldn't have been able to, but now I can.
Yeah. And then there was that chunk of time in the late 90s, early 2000s where people would use digital when they had no reason to, but they wanted to use the new shiny. And now they're kind of drawing back, and it's like, oh, there's some practical effects. There's some digital.
It's funny you're talking about that.
Okay.
So have you seen Rogue One? Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, in the movie, they literally have a digitalized CGI version of Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yep.
And at the end, they have a CGI version of Princess Leia.
Yep.
Now, there's a lot of people that are kind of like, oh, why would they do that? That's stupid. It don't look, there's a lot of criticism.
Yep.
But there's another opinion that's been said where it's like, well, we gotta push that technology further.
Yep.
Obviously, if you see CGI special effects from a decade ago, yeah, they're gonna feel a little bit dated, but you have to go further.
Well, especially if you're Skywalker or Industrial Lights and Magic, like those guys wrote the book. Star Wars pushed it to a new frontier. They've got to push. That's part of what Star Wars does.
Are you a Star Wars fan or a Star Trek or neither?
Both. Hardcore both.
Yeah.
I'm a pop culture junkie.
Do you wish that you were born in a different decade?
I wish I could be born in some decade in the future when a lot of the differences between people were more easily worked out and health.
So you'd rather go further?
I would absolutely.
Okay.
I would. If I could pause now and if I could pull a Philip J. Fry from Futurama and just see where all this stuff ends up, it would be lonely and it would be miserable, and I certainly wouldn't want to live forever after that point. But I would love to see it for a year or two.
Do you think? Okay, let's talk. Let's say 100.
100 years. Okay.
Let's say 100 years.
Uh-huh.
I always feel like say if you took someone from the 1900s.
Sure.
We're in Tacoma. We're in the Pacific Northwest.
Sure.
So let's say Seattle for a reference point.
Okay.
Say you're a person from 1900, 1910. Let's give them 1910. Right?
Sure. Okay.
They know what they know. They're 25 years old, 30 years old, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Say you put them in the time machine. You take them to 2018 right now.
Yep.
They're gonna be impressed with what they're seeing.
I think.
But how much? But do you think? How much do you think they'd be impressed with it? Because, for example, there's still going to be some buildings that are around.
Yeah.
Do you think they'd be like, oh my God, wow, this is totally incredible? What I'm saying is, say you go into the future 100 years, do you think it's going to be literally like the Jetsons? Or do you think it's going to be like, wow, this looks a lot more familiar than I thought?
I think that no matter where I travel, no matter where I've been, people are people. They've got the same kind of basic urges and whatever. And so I don't think that would be a surprise. I think the trappings would be different, and I think that your response to that kind of change would largely depend on how quickly you made friends. So you had a support network to explain to you, no, we don't really ride horses anymore. We drive around in cars.
Yeah.
That's to take your 1900 to now. You'd have to explain cars, airplanes, telephones. Yeah, because it was still telegraph before that. They'd understand movies, but not the way we understand movies.
Yeah.
They would understand people, because people are... I bet they'd say, oh, that guy's a jerk, or, oh, that guy's awesome. But without that the support network, I think you would go insane. I think you would feel so disconnected that you would become a shut-in, like Captain America's apartment in whichever Marvel MCU movie that is.
I remember
when it's like he's got it like kind of retroed out with touchstones that he remembers. He's basically an antique collector, but for him it's a matter of self-protection. But I think, you know, if you took you or I took us both 100 years in the future, I mean, we would spend fully a week marveling at geography. You know, like, what do you mean that's called that now? And what do you mean the coastline's here now? Like Arizona Bay? Like, are you kidding? Is this a joke?
I think, well, this is what I find fascinating about talking about the future. I've seen my fair share of like science fiction movies, especially coming from the 70s and the 80s.
Sure.
And it's usually like, full on, everything is different. The buildings, the things that people are rolling around in and everything like that. The thing I really liked about like the movie Minority Report.
Okay. I hadn't seen that one, but okay.
But you know of it.
Yeah.
What I liked about that movie is that I think it gave a more realistic version of what the future will probably be like.
Okay.
Where a lot of things still kind of look familiar.
Yeah.
But the technology is there.
Yeah.
Like the computer where it's a screen and you can like do this shit.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Jonathan, I would have never thought that like the technology right now, 2018, is your phone.
Yeah.
That's the technology.
Oh yeah. The phone.
It isn't some giant ass computer where you're like talking to like. It's your phone.
Yeah.
I would have never thought that like a phone. That's the technology. That's where things are going. Things are smaller.
Yeah.
I honestly think the next step is going to be implementation.
Oh yeah.
Because like you talk about like cell phones. I remember like when we started having the smartphone, and you have like the screen is that big, you know.
Yeah.
And now you got them that they're kind of like that big. They can't get any bigger. So what's the next step? Imagine if you were able to like, well, first of all, say you had glasses. That you're like, okay, there's my screen.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who has a VR headset.
Yeah.
And he has this VR headset that you wear it. It's like, ooh, here's your computer. Your computer screen like right in front of you.
Yeah.
Very futuristic. I think that's the next step. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of the technology. It's going to be smaller. For lack of a better word, it's going to be hidden.
Yeah.
As opposed to like these grand. I have a feeling that you would probably see a lot. Things will look fairly familiar, but the technology is going to be more hidden.
Yeah. I mean, I could certainly see that. It depends on how optimistic you are.
How optimistic are you?
I'm of two minds. It depends on if we start running out of the things that we need, and I don't even pretend to know what they all are, but like rare earth and metals and whatever that we use to make these great miniaturization leaps forward, then we're going to start seeing sort of a return to like older forms of technology as well, which will create some really fascinating hybrids.
Yeah.
But we're also going to see like biomedical stuff. We're also going to see, as you alluded to, the VR space integrations and the distributed things where we used to have a key, now we just like reach for it because it's coded into our hand or whatever. There used to be a culture cycle in America since consumerist culture, call it about 1900, that was about a 30-year cycle that was tied to people's disposable income and where they were in their own life cycle. My go-to example for that is the 1920s. You had Deco and like streamlined modern, right? Think about the aesthetic of Art Deco buildings.
Okay.
Think the Chrysler Building. Bounce that 30 years forward to the 50s. You're thinking you've incorporated one new element, which is you've added to that kind of chrome jetliner feel.
Yeah.
You've added neon. Okay? Bounce that forward another 30 years, you get to the 1980s. and you get black leather and check patterns, but you've still got the chrome, you've still got the neon colors.
Wow.
And part of why that cycle works, and it does, like 20s, 50s, 80s, 10s, 60s, and set flower children, because you've got with that you've got the Art Nouveau and Craftsman, and then you've got the flower children, and then you've got sort of 90s grunge. And that has to do with where in the consumerist cycle the new home buyers are, the people, the nostalgia. So you've got teenagers buying cheap things from their grandparents in thrift stores when those people die.
Yeah.
Then you've got them looking back at when they were teenagers and all they could afford was the cheap stuff to furnish their first apartment.
Yeah.
But now they're middle age, they've got money and they've got children, but they've got their rec room and their whatever. And they're, I remember that from when I was a kid. And then 30 years later, you've got those people dying and dumping their high-end collection of that stuff back into the vintage cycle. It's why the rat rod kids in the 50s were driving the hot Sportsters of the 20s, because those were the high-quality cars that made it to the junkyards that they could then retool. So it's why in the 50s you had the Deuce Coupe from the 20s. Yeah, and it's always some James Dean looking kid that's putting it together out of parts but it was the high end car from the 20s. But that culture cycle, that spending and economic based cycle is all blown up because the internet in the 1990s made it where every culture is now. Everybody can buy any part of any culture now. So we've still got but if you look at it that 1920s, 1950s, 1980s cycle, how many resurgences in fashion have the 1980s had since 1996? I can think of at least 3, which is way too many. But it's just piecemeal pieces of it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because it used to be that American consumerist culture spread out through the country. It's why it felt like Germany was stuck in the 70s in the 90s in 1980. And the metal band, I saw my favorite metal bands from the 80s live in a beer garden in Switzerland in 2001. A W.A.S.P. I went to a W.A.S.P. show.
Oh, I love W.A.S.P.
Me too. But it's like Blackie Lawless in front of a bunch of Swiss teenagers in Basel, Switzerland in 2001. And it's because it used to spread out, but it doesn't do that anymore. Now it's anything I want from my Tiki bar, I can find vintage Whitco. I collect Whitco. And the only reason I can collect Whitco is because I can find it from wherever it ended up.
Okay. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's a judgment thing. I think it makes people more likely to live in whatever little pop bubble they want.
That's where we're at.
And I think it's more easy for people that are very into a single specific thing to surround themselves with other people that are into that very specific thing. And that has amazing results. Because I'm here, I just did Tiki Con. It was I've been hanging out in the swell of the greater Ohana and meeting people from California and London or England and everywhere because we're all into this one specific thing.
Well, think about it. Even an event hey, there's an event. If you like Tiki, come out because there's going to be a bunch of other Tiki people.
Right.
Done. But imagine if there wasn't that. You'd be you'd have to be walking around and being well, that guy's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I was a punk rocker.
Yeah.
I was a punk rocker in the 80s, right?
Sure.
And I remember I was wearing a Suicidal Tendencies t-shirt.
Yeah.
And then there was a guy who came up to me and he goes, you know who Suicidal Tendencies are? I'm like, hell yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
So you had to go off of but now you have something like the internet, or you want to get specific about shit.
Yeah.
Well, you can get specific.
I mean, that used to be how you flagged it, I wore my AC/DC Razor's Edge t-shirt, and I had the band logos drawn on my denim jacket.
Dude, I had a W.A.S.P. concert shirt.
Awesome.
So
I had a W.A.S.P. hockey jersey from that same concert.
I had a W.A.S.P. codpiece that had a razor blade coming right out.
Awesome.
No, I didn't. I just kidding.
I tried to make one. I did. No, no bullshit. I tried to make one.
Your mom's like, "What are you doing in there, Jonathan?" Nothing.
I'm making my tiger print codpiece from the album cover of "I Fuck Like a Beast." Because
I remember when I heard that song, I'm like, "Oh my god."
Oh yeah.
I was okay. Yeah, I'm in.
Oh yeah. But it used to be you had to mail order that shit. You had to mail order it, and it came.
You had
from,
the mail order the codpiece.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, extra large, right? You gotta find.
No, I didn't need an extra large one. And that is how we end the video.
Dude, what fun.
Yes. Family's important.
I agree.
Or should I say Ohana?
In this context, absolutely. Ohana means family.
Oh.
No one is left behind. Come on, finish the line. Or forgotten.
Or forgotten. Did I get it?
Yeah, I think you did.
Hey gang, this is Tiki with Ray, and I just want to say thank you very much for checking out my video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see more episodes, click on the subscribe button. And if you liked the video, give it a like. That would mean a lot to me. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave a comment in the comment section below.